2024 was a fabulous reading year. I read more books than I've ever read in my whole life. Well, in the span of a year, I guess. I think there's a couple reasons for that. One, I was really active on BookTube, which encouraged me to read more. Thank you very much. I'll give you credit for that. Two, I set my reading goal very low for me, so I didn't feel any pressure to keep reading or to read short books in order to reach a goal. I truly was just picking up books that I was really interested in, which leads us to three. I was reading a lot of really great books, which encouraged me to keep reading more because it was so good. I never found myself in a reading slump at any point in the year. So thank you, 2024, for treating me so well. So in 2024, I read 76 books. I think previously the most I've ever read in a year was 60 books. Gotta love it. You love to see it. I had set my goal to 24, which I knew I would be able to hit because I consistently read about 50 books a year. I found that really helped me. I think my 2025 goal will be to read 25 books. Since I had such a great reading year, I did struggle to pick a top 10, which is such a great feeling. I remember last year I was just like, I don't know, I kind of like these, I guess. But these 10 I really, really loved, and they're actually in order, which is rare because usually I sort of feel about the same about all of the ones I really enjoyed. But this year, I'm gonna take you down the list from 10 to 1. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back to my channel, by the way. My name's Marissa, and I like to talk about books and book design. So these were my top 10 books of 2024. Coming in at number 10, we have Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. I did read this one on my Kindle, but I'll just put a little picture here so you can see the actual cover. Annie Bot is set in, I don't know if it's supposed to be the future or dystopian, or if it's just a twist on modern world if we had robots. Basically, in their world, they do have robots, and they have them for house cleaning, the cuddle bots, which are essentially sex bots, and I think there's a third one, but I can't remember because those two are the most prevalent in the story. So Annie Bot is initially a cleaning bot bought by this man who eventually turns her into a cuddle bot and has this relationship with her. I mean, he really does see it as a relationship. Complex to say, he treats her like his girlfriend, but she's kind of like a sex slave like she's held captive there. She doesn't have any choice on whether or not she wants to be there. The story is sort of about how she becomes more and more aware of her own humanity and how she sort of grows the desire to make choices for herself. And I just found it so good. I could not put it down. I was reading it in my Kindle when I was in New York City, and I was just so excited to go home and read every night because I thought the story was really compelling. We're in a really weird place in our world right now where we are seeing a lot more going on with artificial intelligence, and I really don't think what is going on in Annie Bot is outside of the question in the future. I do see that becoming a reality. It was just interesting to think about it and to think about, what really makes you you. But then it's just a complex conversation because it's like, well, she's not actually human. She's a robot. I don't know. I just really enjoyed it. I'm trying to remember what I rated it. I think I gave it 4 stars. Okay, yes, I did give Annie Bot 4 out of 5 stars. Next on the list, we have Carmilla by Sheridan fanu. This is one of the books I read in my vampire reading blog, which I know is not out yet, but it's gonna be the next video out because I have finished editing it. I just thought I wanted to post this video first. So you'll see it in about 2 weeks. I read Carmilla for that, and I absolutely love this story. It is a gothic novella about a vampire, a female vampire, and the story actually predates Dracula by 25 years, which I just found so fascinating. And this is just a perfect gothic romantic novel. Well, okay, forgive me. It is romantic in the aesthetic, but not necessarily, maybe it's a little bit romantic. No. Yeah, I think it's more horror than it is romance. It's not romance at all, actually. I'm just living in my delusions. If you do consider the little bit of romance that is in there, it is a lesbian romance, which is, I don't know, it's kind of just crazy because this book is from the 1800s, I believe. Let's see. Yeah, so like about 1871, 1872. Pretty cool. You'll hear me talk more about it in my vampire reading blog very shortly, so I'll leave it at that, but I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is a contemporary fiction that I really loved, and that was Big Swiss by Jen Beagin. This is one of those books that I think if you get it, you get it. Not a lot happens in the plot. It sort of is just getting into the weird drama and minds of people in this town that is revealed through the sex therapist in the town, because our narrator, Greta, is the transcriber. Is that what it's called? Transcriber? Transcript writer? Yeah, I'll say transcriber for the sex therapist. So she knows all of these people's dramas, and she is kind of a bad person, I'll be honest. She is a little bit evil, but not so evil. I don't know. She's just not a good person. She's sort of a complicated narrator and unreliable in her own way. You just never really know if what she's telling is true or not. And sometimes she sees things a certain way because of her own past trauma and her own like mental illnesses, honestly. And then you later find out that the situation is not exactly how she described it. I just love books like that. If you're really into like great character-driven books that takes a look at really complex characters, I think you'll enjoy this one a lot. But if you're someone who's in it for the plot, maybe not for you. So I give this one 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I have on the list is like cheating a little bit, but not really, because I started reading this book in August of 2023. However, I finished it literally 2 days ago, I think. So it counts because I did also read it in 2024 and I finished it in 2024. And that would be A Court of Mist and Fury. Yeah, I never claimed to not be like all the other girls. I am. And I did like this. And I know people have their complex feelings on the series, but I found it very enjoyable. I thought the world was very immersive. I liked the romance, I liked the tension, and although it took me like well over a year to read, I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And every time I picked it back up, I was immediately drawn back into the world and I found it very enjoyable. That's all I really have to say about it. You guys know what this book is, and it's the sequel anyways, so I don't want to spoil, but yeah, if you don't like it, cool, I don't care. If you do like it, yay, like, whatever, I don't know. I don't like, you know what? We're gonna go there. We're gonna take a little brief rant here. This is probably like one of the top books that you consider like a book talk book. And I think that kind of has a connotation of it being like not a good book or lesser than other books because it's not super literary. But at the end of the day, it's a book that a lot of people find enjoyable. And is that not what we're reading for? Like, I mean, yes, there are so many reasons to read, to like learn more and expand your knowledge and just keep your brain active. But also it is a form of entertainment. And if people are entertained, let them be. Say what you will about this series, it got a lot of people back into reading. And that's important. You know what? Because another book that did that in the early 2000s, Twilight, it's like the same thing. And people hated on that because, yeah, the writing isn't great. There are lots of better books. But if that book encourages people to continue reading, don't hate on them for enjoying it, okay? Rant over, but yeah. Now with number 6, we are moving into nonfiction territory because I read a lot of memoirs in 2024. Only 2 ended up on the list, and this is one of them. Tell Me Everything by Minka Kelly. I'm not remembering what the video is called right now, but in my mid-year wrap-up, I said that this was my top book of the year, and it has moved down a little bit because I read lots of other great books, but it's still number 6 on the list. I think this is a fantastic memoir. If you're just looking for a good memoir to get into, this is a great one. And I don't even necessarily know that much about Minka Kelly. I wasn't like a fan before reading it, and I still got a lot out of the story. It really goes into detail about her complicated relationship with her mother. I think I said this in my other video, but I see this as a grown-up version of I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Although I really loved that book as well, I ultimately preferred Minka Kelly's just because she wrote it a little bit later in her life than Jeanette did, so she's been removed from the situation with her mother for a while now, and it just seemed like she had a lot more time to reflect on it, and she had a little bit more nuanced commentary. Not that Jeanette didn't. Jeanette's book is also fantastic, and I think there's a place for both of them, but in my opinion, I just got a lot more out of this one and I really enjoyed it. And I rated Tell Me Everything 4 out of 5 stars. Moving on to number 5. This one is a little bit exciting because this next author is the only author that shows up twice on this list. Bride by Ali Hazelwood. No one is surprised here. I love Ali Hazelwood. Every time I read her books, I'm somehow still surprised that she can grip me at the ways that she does. There's just something about her writing that is so addicting. I feel like she does tension better than maybe any other romance author, at least that I've read. I know that she's kind of one of those authors that's like, you either love her or you hate her. I don't want to say hate, that's strong. It's just not for you. And that's okay, but it is for me. And oh boy, did I love this one. This one was also in my vampire reading vlog, so you'll get to hear me talk a little bit more about it. I found that I couldn't put it down. This book was one of those books that for the first time in a long time, I like was itching to go home and keep reading. Like I was out at the function and I wanted to come home to get in bed with this book. Now, why did that sound kind of sensual? But anyway, yeah, it's like she put crack in this. There's like actually no better way for me to describe it. I did rate it 4 out of 5 stars just because I found it wasn't as vampire-y as I wanted it to be. It kind of just felt like all her other romance books, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing because I love her other romance books. But if you're looking for like a true like vampire book, this is not the one. Now we are jumping back to the second memoir on this list. This book is so fantastic. Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. It's somehow both a must read, but also a maybe like protect your peace and don't read it because it was so devastating. And this is, I think, the only book my book club has ever had a 5-star flush with. Every single person who read it rated it 5 stars. Like, that's how you know it's just that good. If you're looking for a good memoir to read, this is absolutely one that you should pick up. Crying in H Mart talks a lot about Michelle Zauner's experience being half Korean and half white in the United States, but it's also and mainly about her relationship with her mother. Yeah, I mean, that's a theme in memoirs, I guess, or at least the ones I pick up. And it is just so deeply personal and moving. She doesn't hold anything back. It is just like the most raw and vulnerable memoir I have ever read. I feel like I learned a lot about Korean culture that I didn't know, a lot about Korean dishes, which I loved reading about, but then just a lot about her relationship with her mother. It made me reflect a lot about my relationship with my mother. I guess I'll just tell you that in this book, her mother has cancer, so it is dealing with that, and it is really tough. It is so heartbreaking to read, but it did make me think a lot about my own mother and just appreciate the time I have had with her and that I still have with her because she is still living, and it just made me really think about that and not take it for granted. Yeah, highly recommend. And now we're going back to Ali Hazelwood, the next Ali Hazelwood that made my list and top 3 of 2024. That's saying something. Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood. Oh, I loved it. Oh, I loved it. I ate this up like nothing else. I loved it. It's that Ali Hazelwood tension. Like, she just knows how to get me. And I was on the edge of my seat. This is a young adult romance novel. I think you just need to like be prepared for that because it is young adult, and I think it reads that way. I didn't find that bothersome, but it's about this girl named Mallory who is sort of a chess whiz prodigy. Maybe that's the word. She's so good at it, but she gives it up one day because of something that happens with her father, who is like the one who taught her about chess. And so she puts it away, decides to give up chess, until one day she enters a like small local tournament at the request of her best friend and ends up playing the top chess player in the world, who is conveniently also a young man named Nolan. She actually beats him. So it like sets him on this quest to find out like, who is this young chess prodigy that I've never heard of? She doesn't have a chess ranking, which is apparently a big thing in the chess world. From there, she does start playing chess again, and it's just really interesting. Clearly, I don't know that much about chess, but I enjoy it enough to like reading about it. But what I really think this book was just like super successful at was having not only a complex main character, but all the side characters were also complex, because I am not a romance reader. So actually this is crazy that one ended up in my top 3. I find that what I usually don't like about them is that the side characters and like the love interest best friend are only there to kind of poke at the relationship and be like, oh, you have a crush on them, or whatever the hell they say. But then they don't add anything else to the story, and it seems like they don't have lives outside of this relationship in this story, and it just bores me. Like, it immediately takes me out of a story. I just find it so unrealistic. But in Checkmate, I found that all of the characters were super well-rounded and not flat. I don't know, it just helped me fall in love with the story, and I think it's great. And now to just completely switch genres, the top 2 book for me of 2024 was 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Now, if you know me, you know I am a Stephen King enjoyer, but I'm also a Stephen King critiquer. And I really find that a lot of his books are hit or miss. I'll read one and I'll be like, this is fantastic. And then I'll read another one and be like, I don't know about that. This was one, clearly, that restored my faith in Stephen King. I mean, this is a thick book, and it took me reading the physical book, reading it on my Kindle, and listening to the audiobook to read it. That's a me problem. But I found that the entire time I was reading this long book, I was never bored. Usually a really long book like this, there are parts that drag and you're like, okay, like you could have cut this down a few pages. But I just loved the whole story. Like, I truly was not bored. And I think that's quite rare with a large book. It's one of Stephen King's better novels. He really took a risk on this genre. Like, it's not his typical horror that he writes. I think it's technically sci-fi, but it's more of like a historical fiction. It's sci-fi in that it kind of deals with time travel. The whole plot is there's this guy named Jake Ebbing. His friend in the modern day, they're in 2011, finds this sort of wormhole portal to go back in time. Whenever they step through it, it puts them into 1958. This guy wants to go back and stop the Kennedy assassination, but unfortunately he finds that he has lung cancer, so he is going to die before he has the chance to go through the portal to 1958 and live in the past until 1963 to stop the assassination. So he asks his friend Jake to go back and do it for him because Jake is in his 30s or something. He's considerably younger than the other guy. It's just such a fascinating story. I think I really enjoyed just like the look back into the past, how he adjusts to living in the 50s, 60s time period, which is so vastly different from 2011, but also the things he has to go through in order to change the past, because not only does he go back and change the assassination, but he's going back to change an event that happened to someone he knows personally. And we find in the story that the past really does not like to be changed, so there's a lot of obstacles in his way. It gripped me. I loved it, and I'm so glad I read this with the Little Library Book Club, because it has been sitting on my shelf for like almost 10 years at this point, and I don't think I would have picked it up soon without them. I ultimately ended up rating it 4 out of 5 stars though, just because I do feel like a lot was missing in terms of the conversation of this like white man going back to the past, to the like late 50s. Occasionally he mentions racism and what's going on with people of color in the time, but for the most part he does not. Like, it is definitely overlooked, and I think that was a big miss on Stephen King's part. And I feel like the times when he does throw it in, it feels a little bit like an afterthought. I do think the story could have been a lot better had that just been considered from the beginning and had more of an effect on the story. But ultimately, I still found it really enjoyable. I thought it was just a unique look at time travel, but it ended up as number 2 for me. And now we have arrived at my favorite book from 2024, and now one of my favorite books of all time. It blew me away. I was like sat start to finish. It's one of the best character-driven novels I have read in a long time, and that would be Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a must read, and I mean that wholeheartedly. I already said it's more of a character-driven novel, but I think even if that's not your preference, you would still get a lot out of this book. It follows these 2 friends throughout the course of their whole lives. They meet when they're young, and they eventually grow up and reunite in college, and they create video games together. Even if you're not really like a gamer, I think you'll still enjoy this novel. I already mentioned I loved the characters and how you see them grow throughout the course of the novel, but the writing is also so beautiful. I think it's just a really unique story. I haven't read anything else like this. The way it bounces back and forth between time it's just like utterly captivating. That, I don't know why I said that, but I meant it. I meant it when I said it, okay? It's utterly captivating, because sometimes you'll be in the present and you'll kind of get a little like nugget of information, and you'll be like, okay. And then when you go back to the past, it's kind of revealed why that was important, and everything just locks up so nicely. I absolutely loved it. I'm so glad I read this. This was another one that I read with the Little Library Book Club, so basically you should join if you want to read good books. And I cannot express enough how I think everyone needs to read this book. And there we have it. Those were my top 10 books of 2024. What a great year. amazing even. I am so excited to keep reading into 2025, which is all I could ask for, that the books I read in 2024 have kind of fueled that fire to keep the love of reading going. I hope you read lots of great books in 2024 as well. I really want to hear about them, so please let me know in the comments what was your top book of 2024. Maybe I'll read it in 2025. So with that, signing off. I hope you had a fantastic holiday season, fantastic New Year's, and I will see you real soon.